Alright, so hopefully at this point you have watched the video on how to set up your Google template and your in Google Drawings and also in Google Photos. So this video is going to be a demonstration on how to start your final draft for your hands project. And so what we want to do is we're going to take those two Google Drawing documents that we already created. They should be saved in your Google Drive. So note, I have these printed out just for the sake of this video. You do not need to print these out. If you are somebody at home and you like to use a hard copy right in front of you, I personally do, but I'm not going to ask you to waste ink or anything like that. We actually are not able to print at school because of the cost of ink. So like I said, if you're at home and you want to print these out, that's totally fine. That's totally up to you. But just note that you do not have to do that. Okay, so this is in your Google Drawings. And then in class, I'm going to provide some of you with the 9 by 12 inch drawing paper. If you're somebody at home that doesn't have access to drawing paper, I just want you to know that this is just this is just going to be offered in class because kids are here and we have a bunch of paper. If you're at home and you don't have this, I want you to know that whatever you have is going to be totally acceptable. I understand that you're not going to have all these materials. Also, if you wanted to go out and purchase some paper, some drawing paper, like Pat Catan's, Michael's, I would just ask one of the workers there at the store what's a good quality drawing paper. It shouldn't cost more than a couple bucks, but note, you do not have to go to the store for this project. You could actually do this whole thing right in your sketchbook and it'll be totally acceptable. Okay, so alright, let's get started. So what we want to do, we actually used this 3 by 3 inch grid. And some of you might recognize this grid. It's actually the grid that's on your cell phones. When you take a picture and you go to crop your picture, this grid is actually, in the world of photography, it's called the rule of thirds. Okay? So the rule of thirds, you have 3 by 3, and you have these anchor points. And typically what photographers try to do is they try to put their main images, the main objects in their picture, on these anchor points, and it helps set up a quality composition. So composition is just simply the arrangement of whatever it is that you're drawing. So if you're drawing a hand, then the composition is where am I going to put this hand in my drawing. Okay, so that is basically that's kind of where I got this grid from. But it's also a really good tool to help you draw your images with more accuracy and better proportion. Okay, so now that we have our two Google Docs, or now that we have our two Google Drawings and our references kind of set up on that grid, what you're going to do next is you're going to take your 9 by 12 inch paper and you're going to divide this into thirds. So if you take your ruler, the nice thing about 9 by 12 is it is divisible by 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a ruler and I'm going to put a mark at 4 and 8. Okay, if you are in class, we do have rulers in the back. You do need to make sure that with soap and water you wash the ruler when you're finished and put it back. I would also recommend washing your hands before and after using it. So you're going to put your mark at 4 and 8. You're going to rotate your paper, and then you're going to divide this side, it's the shorter side, so by 3. You're going to put this mark at 3. You're going to put this mark at 6. And you're going to do the same exact thing to the opposite side of your paper. So you're going to put a mark at 3 and a mark at 6. Now, remember, while I'm showing you this, I also want to note that if you do not have access to a ruler, you can still accomplish the same thing just by simply eyeballing where the third is. Alright, but I would highly recommend probably trying to find some sort of ruler if you're going to go through this process. Also note that this whole process is optional. You could freehand your whole drawing. So I don't want you to think, shoot, Mr. Petter's going to give me a bad grade because I didn't do this. This process will help you, but just kind of know that it's not 100% necessary. Okay, so what I did there was I actually took my 2 points and I drew a line connecting the two. Okay, so I just divided this side by 3, this side by 3, and the same thing on the shorter sides. All right, and then what I did was I took my ruler, lined up my ruler with the 2 points, make sure I put my hand down on the ruler so it doesn't move, and I'm very lightly going to drag. So in this video, you should actually barely be able to see these lines, because if I push down too hard, what it's going to do is it's going to be really difficult to erase this line when I'm done drawing, and I don't want this whole grid showing up at the end of my project. Okay, so that is kind of why I drew it nice and light. So if you press down too hard, you're probably going to regret it, and I would actually go ahead and I would recommend that you go back and try that again on a separate sheet of paper. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my hand. All right, and so with this image, what I want to do is I'm going to take box number 1. So if it helps, you could even, if you have it printed out, you could label these boxes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You could do that if you want. So I'm going to take the top left box, and I'm actually going to start sketching anything inside this box. So I have my middle finger right here. So what I'm going to do, you see how I'm going to start, I always like to start on the edge of the box, because the edge tells me where the object is entering the box. Okay, so if I look right here, just barely inside this corner, that's where this finger starts. And then from here, I'm gonna kind of eyeball it. Okay, notice that I'm actually almost the same size, but this paper is actually a little bit bigger. So my measurements are going to be a little bit bigger on my drawing. So from here to here, I'm going to say it's about right here. Okay? And then the finger comes all the way up to about here. And that's going to give me a pretty good idea of where that finger is going to go. Now what I want to do, just like in the how to draw a hand video, I still want to kind of lightly sketch this out. And I'm just going to sketch out the rough shape. Okay, so I'm going to sketch this out very lightly because I may end up erasing it. Okay, and that's my middle finger. Okay, then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to draw my pointer finger, which actually starts about here. I like to put little marks where it starts. Goes to about here. And then I can kind of get this angle right if I have my paper and my reference lined up. Okay, so just lightly sketch out where your pointer goes. Cool. So I got box 1 completed. Am I going to go into a ton of detail yet? No, I'm not going to do that just yet, because I want to make sure it all lines up before I spend too much time on all the detail. Okay, so down here, let me scoot this up a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and start with this box. If you would like to jump over here, that's fine. A lot of times what I like to do is I like to keep things connected. Alright, so I'll lightly sketch out this little negative space triangle, okay, which helps me kind of visualize my proportion a little bit better. I notice that my hand actually runs off the page down here, and this line is relatively straight, but it might come out a little bit and then come back in. So I just want to lightly just get an idea of where that goes. I noticed that at the bottom of this triangle, it goes down just a little further, and then it bubbles out. And then I have it exiting the box right here, and then I got a little crease right there. Okay? Does everyone see this little tiny? It's kind of hard to see. Okay, this little tiny negative space here. Okay, so I want to make sure there's just a little tiny negative space in my drawing. I'm going to angle it right over here, and I'm going to stop. Okay? The next thing is I'm just going to go ahead and finish off this box down here. So the bottom left box. Notice I just have this little, almost like the edge of my hand, like the knuckle. So I can go ahead and add that. Now I can go ahead and start up working on this middle box. And the middle box is going to be my thumb. So do you see how my thumb just barely comes into this box up here? So I want to make sure it just barely comes in. comes down here. And I'm just going to lightly sketch out. You can even put little marks down here to show where that thumb enters and exits. And I'm just going to very lightly sketch out where that thumb goes. And then later, what I'll do is I'll go in and fine-tune that and get all my shapes and everything how I need it. Okay, does that make sense? So, what I'm going to do, just for the sake of time, I'm actually going to move on. So I'm going to pretty much pretend like I'm finished with this hand drawing, and then we'll go from there. Okay? Alright, so let's pretend that I'm finished with my hand. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to take your background reference, okay, which mine are these flowers, and you're going to do the same exact thing. Okay? Notice you have this blue rectangle that is lined up, and it's actually measured out so that it's proportionally correct with your paper. Alright, so hopefully at home, if you're doing this on like a piece of paper that's very square, you're not going to want to do it on square paper. You want to make sure that it's a rectangle. Most paper is proportional with 2 by 3. Alright, so it should work out with this grid for the most part. Okay, even if it's just slightly off, it wouldn't even be noticeable. So what you're going to do is you're going to take this box and you're going to start sketching your background. And if you want, you could actually sketch right over top of your fingers. But once you get the hang of it, you really don't need to do that. You can just kind of sketch around your hand. And you're going to draw your entire background. Okay, just the outline. We don't need to shade anything in yet. We're just working on the outline. And you're going to do the same thing all the way throughout. So you have this really cool like centerpiece to this flower. Okay, so I can go ahead and draw that in right where it is in my picture. So it's about halfway up the second box. I can sketch that out. Then I got this leaf, or this petal that kind of comes out, and it exits the box over here. Okay, so I'm just lightly sketching this out, trying to get a good idea of where it is. Once I have it mostly figured out, I can go ahead and just fine-tune it later on. But you're going to draw your entire hand first, just the outline, so no shading yet. Okay, you can draw in the details, you can draw in all these little creases. Okay, feel free to draw the wrist. You can make it as accurate as possible. Alright, put all these wrinkles in there. What I don't necessarily want you to do yet is I don't want you to start shading, because there's going to be a whole separate video and actually a whole separate lesson on how to shade and how to get your correct values. So hopefully this video helps. Hopefully the grid helps you, and hopefully you set up to get a nice start for your projects. Okay, if you have any questions, don't stress about it. Just reach out to me and we can work through this together. Alright, have fun and good luck.